Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope you're all doing well today. Today I've got some exciting encounters to share with you, but before we get into these encounters, a couple links. The first link I'd like to share with you is Tromix, lead delivery system, home of the original 458 SOCOM and owned by Tony Ramore, a true American. He designed an AR upper to be attached to your existing AR lower and blast 458 instead of 223 or 556. He designed this for our troops in the Middle East to stop truck bombs. Straight across the board, guys. A 458 is gonna stop a truck, it's gonna stop the Dogman. Tromix link is in the description below, and please check out some of Tony's other amazing products. On to my links. As you know, I rely on my Patreon, my PayPal, and my merch to help this channel to continue to grow and go. Those links are in the description below, as well as my second channel, for creepypasta, fanfiction, and scary voice acting. Stories that don't fit on this channel. Now, if that's anything that you're into, follow that link, give those stories a listen. You may just like what you hear. I also started a GoFundMe page a while back to help raise some money for urbex, cryptid hunting, and ghost hunting equipment. If that's something that you're willing to help with, that link is also in the description below. Now I've taken enough of your time. Let's get on with these amazing yet terrifying encounters. Shall we? Tonight's first encounter brings us to Central Oklahoma. This is an experience my mom and dad had that happened back in December of 2018. They were coming back home from having dinner and pulled into the driveway and parked. The area where they live is moderately wooded and on a large plot of land, about 20 acres. They got out of their car and started to walk to the door when they heard a blood-curdling scream coming from about 10 feet away from them. Not only was the scream terrifying, but it was extremely loud. My dad is a state trooper and served in the U.S. Marine Corps, so not much actually scares him. He's the guy to watch a horror movie at 3 a.m. with all the lights off and the curtains open. However, that night, he said he was genuinely terrified. They snapped out of their trance and ran inside, and he came back out with his gun and got in his patrol car and started to check out the area. He shined his spotlight down into the pasture and onto the property, but didn't find a thing. The fact that he did this is alarming because he would never pull a gun out if it was a joke. I've only seen him actually pull a gun 2 other times in my life, and this isn't the only experience. Only about a week after that, I came back home from college for winter break. I was sitting on the front porch late one night having some coffee. It was pretty cold, and I was reading my book when I heard something eerie coming from the pasture to the east of my house. Our house faces the south. It sounded like a creaking, but there was no wind blowing, and I know the area clearly, and there wasn't a hanging branch or anything of that matter to justify the sound. Even though it creeped me out, I refused to think anything of it and brushed it off as a strange experience and unexplainable. Thoroughly chilled, no pun intended, I stopped reading my book because of the bad lighting from the Christmas lights and went inside. After a while, I found I forgot my book outside and went out to grab it. This time I heard a low, poor howl. The only canine creatures that live around this place is coyotes, and when you hear them, it's a mixture of yips and short, pitchy howls. Hearing it and having my fears proved that it was some otherworldly being, I grabbed my book and ran inside. About 20 minutes later, my brother comes home from his friend's house. He walks in and doesn't say anything except, "Hey." I tell him what I experienced because we all have experiences that we tell each other to creep each other out. To my surprise, he said he heard the same thing just a couple minutes earlier when he was walking inside. The sound had moved from its previous location, southwest of my position, and was now at the northwest corner of the property. He said it was a sound of long, deep, but poor or weak, kind of like the one I heard. My brother seemed more spooked with his encounter than I did. He said the duration was so long and that it sounded fake, like a poor imitation of a growl. After that, there wasn't any more sightings the entire time I was home. It's since been ruled out that it was a deer because we have a lot of them and they do make strange noises. I feel like it may have been a skinwalker or something other than that, possibly a dogman. We do live near a spot where Native Americans hold their powwows, and there is a house in our neighborhood that is built on a Native American burial ground, allegedly. So it wouldn't be a surprise that this may be the case. I have other experiences with strange sounds and being whistled at in the dark, but no other sightings so far. Tonight's second encounter brings us to Montana. This event happened 3 years ago during mid-July, and I lived in Montana, just outside of a rural community with a population of about 2,000. During this time, I lived in a small, one-floored ranch home by myself. My nearest neighbor lived a mile away and was a farmer. I never had many strange encounters leading up to this one, but the woods by my house always had an ominous feel to it. Soon after moving in, I realized why the previous homeowners had left so quickly. I'd start hearing noises in the woods. These weren't just any noises, but they sounded like blood-curdling screams and growls. After some research, I learned that even something like a raccoon or a bobcat could make these unnatural noises, and chalked it up to being that. But still, it's just never felt right. It's hard to explain. But I never felt like this before, and it was just something about the woods around my house that made me feel uncomfortable, kind of like I was being watched. The first experience I couldn't explain happened about 2 weeks after I moved in. There was a thunderstorm, and the thunder was loud enough to keep me awake. I never did feel comfortable in storms. The lightning was crazy and would light up the whole surrounding area for a fraction of a second. I was lying on the couch and got up and got a glass of water from the sink. It was about 2 a.m. if I remember correctly. Above the sink is a small window that gives you a view of my yard leading up to a tree line. When the next flash of lightning hit, I saw it. Admittedly, it wasn't a long view, but it gave me enough time to see whatever this thing was. It was near the tree line, just a few steps into my yard. At first, I thought it was a bear, but it wasn't. It was standing on 2 legs with its face pointed towards the house. Its legs were like a dog's, and I could clearly make out the hocks. It was hard to tell the color of the fur, but it was dark. Its upper body was massive, with a wide torso, and the arms that could almost reach the ground from standing. The strangest thing is how the upper body seemed to dwarf the lower body. After standing there, frozen in shock, I waited for the next lightning strike, but when it happened, it wasn't there. It happened so quickly and was gone so quickly. After that, I bought a gun and would sleep with it by my arms. The next encounter is what I consider the most frightening thing of my life. For several weeks, nothing worth noting happened. I didn't get cable where I lived, and one night I was watching something on my satellite, and it kept acting up. I didn't like going outside at night, but this would be quick. I just had to move the antenna just a little bit. Nothing had happened for a few weeks, so I decided to go and do it. I grabbed my gun and a flashlight and went outside. The first thing I noticed was it was eerily quiet. That was what started and surrounded me. This time of year at night, the woods are active with all types of creatures, but definitely not tonight. Despite the growing fear, I made my way over to the satellite and began to adjust it. That's when I heard a small snap of a stick and quickly turned to my left and shined the flashlight towards the direction of the noise. What I saw will horrify me for the rest of my life. I was immediately met with glowing red eyes. These eyes were the color of blood, and they were evil. The head of this thing looked like a mutated German shepherd, and I don't like to say it, but it looked like a werewolf from the movies. A long snout and pointed ears, the fur was black and shaggy in some spots. I could see the creature's extremely developed, muscular body, and it dwarfed even the biggest humans on Earth. It was half in and half out of the woods, almost crouching, and it still came up to my head, and I'm 6 feet tall. Fully standing, this thing would have been easily 8 feet tall. I was about 20 feet from this thing. I didn't even consider my gun, which I bought to protect me. Chances are, in hindsight, the little .223 bullet would have just pissed this thing off before it tore me to shreds. I backed away slowly, never breaking eye contact with it. I gently picked up my gun, and my fight or flight reflexes kicked in. I chose flight. Maybe not the best option, but even if I stayed there, this thing would have killed me. I ran the fastest I had ever in my life and didn't turn back once. I have no idea if it pursued me. I got to the house, locked every door, window, and covered the blinds, and sat with my back against the wall, cradling the gun the entire night. I didn't get a wink of sleep that night, and very few the following next days. To make a long story short, I don't live there anymore. People often talk about Sasquatch being harmonious with nature and living within the ecosystem. Sure, if you see one, you might be scared, but it's probably more an awe than anything. With this thing, it was totally different. It felt unnatural, it was sinister, it felt evil. It was stalking me, toying with me, and I believe it wanted to kill me. I've never seen or experienced this feeling again in my life. It is a memory I try to put past me, but I still have nightmares about it. I think until the day I die, I will always have that image burned into my memory. The best image I have seen that fits the description of this creature is the werewolves in the movie. The Howling, if that makes sense. Today's third and final encounter is brought to us by a subscriber from his cousin in Oklahoma. My cousin's one of the most trustworthy persons I've ever known, and he told me he saw a Dogman once. He said he was walking from his house to the lake with his fishing pole and some worms. The lake is about a half a mile from his house. He said when he got to the top of the hill, about halfway to the lake, he said he saw something moving in the brush down below at the bottom of the hill. Off the side of the trail, he walks about 20 feet into the brush and bramble. Something black was moving the brush around. He stopped at the top of the hill and quietly knelt down to watch this thing, because he said he could tell this thing was big the way it was moving the brush and bramble around. He said he watched the brush move for about a minute or two, getting small glimpses of a huge, black, hairy animal. His initial thought was black bear, but they're rare in this part of Oklahoma. I've lived in Oklahoma my entire life, and I've never seen a bear in the wild here, and neither has he. Anyway, he said he watched it move around for a few minutes, and he saw a rabbit dart across the trail, coming from the side of whatever this thing was. And he said that's when this thing tore through the bramble after the rabbit, crossing the trail. He said this thing was on 2 feet, running out of the bushes after the rabbit. And when it hits the opening of the trail, he got a quick glance at it. It went running off into the other side of the trail, hauling ass after the hare. He said it scared him how big and fast and strong this thing was. Just ripping through all the brush, small trees, breaking limbs off as it went right through it all. He said the clear glance of this thing was only a second or two, but it was enough to see it was not a bear or any other normal creature. He said it was clearly a wolf-looking thing running on two legs with very pointed ears. He noted the ears several times, saying they were very tall and pointy. It had its hands out in front of it while running, kind of hunched forward. Long fingers, very dark, black color. He said he estimated about 7.5 to 8 feet tall. He said it was hunched forward, but if it had stood straight up, it would have been every bit of 8 feet. He listened to it smash its way through the brush after that rabbit. For a few seconds after seeing it, he stood up and grabbed his fishing pole and turned around and quickly and quietly started home. I asked him about the face. He said he didn't get but a quick side view of its face, but he said it was undoubtedly a wolf head on a very tall, muscular man-type body. I believe every word this man has told me. He's fished this spot his whole life, and he's never been back there since. Wow. 3 amazing encounters. The subscriber's cousin's encounter is just amazing. You know, you're going on a nice walk, going fishing, probably whistling. All of a sudden, the area around you starts moving, the brush and trees, and rabbit comes running out, and boom! Now, first you're nervous because you think it's a bear, but no, you see a Dogman. Just your brain doesn't make sense of the matter, you know. The first encounter, wow, you know, just the multitude of sounds. Like I said, the previous upload, the ones that you don't see it are the ones that scare you the most. And then the second one was just, you know, I've actually narrated that encounter once before, but not with the detail. I contacted the person, not thinking they were going to get back to me, and they did. And the detail in this narration is a lot different if you go back and listen. He also made a couple of comments at the end about Sasquatch being harmonious with nature, and the Dogman is definitely not a harmonious being of nature. It's just weird how some cryptids can be judged by their looks or how they act, but I'm guessing from this guy's detail, this was definitely a malicious Dogman, and he's very lucky he got to his house that day. Well, I hope you enjoyed these, and with that, guys, I bid you farewell.